Ethan Cole had lived his whole life under the wide sky of the desert. He wasn't the kind of cowboy people told grand stories about. He didn't chase excitement, and he didn't search for danger. He preferred quiet mornings, open land, and the simple rhythm of ranch work. Each day started before sunrise, when the sky was still soft and the world felt calm. Ethan liked that time the most. It felt like the earth was breathing slowly, waking up with him. He lived on a small ranch outside a forgotten little town. The place wasn't famous for anything, but it had its share of stories. Old legends passed down by tired cowboys, told around campfires after long days. One of the stories that people liked to whisper about was the story of a hidden spring deep inside the canyon. Some called it beautiful, some called it dangerous, and some refused to talk about it at all. They said that anyone who drank from that spring claimed to hear a strange voice afterward, a soft whisper that felt like it came from nowhere and everywhere at the same time. But Ethan never believed in things like that. He was practical. If someone forgot to drink water and heard strange things, he blamed the heat. If someone got lost in the canyon and said the land spoke to them, he blamed exhaustion. To him, the real world was simple. You worked hard, you stayed honest, and you respected the land. Stories were just stories. One afternoon, Ethan rode out to check on the cattle. The day felt hotter than usual, one of those dry, heavy days where the air barely moved. He planned to make a quick round and return before sunset, but when he counted the herd, he realized one of the young calves was missing. That wasn't normal. A calf wandering alone could easily get stuck somewhere or fall behind. Ethan didn't think twice. He followed the small tracks that led away from the open field and toward the edge of the canyon. He expected to find the calf not far from home, maybe caught in some brush or resting under shade. But the tracks kept going deeper, winding through dry paths and rocky ground. He wiped sweat from his forehead, feeling the heat rising from the earth. His horse, Daisy, seemed tired, too, moving slower with each step. Ethan patted her neck gently to reassure her. "Just a little more," he whispered. He didn't want to give up. A rancher takes care of every animal, no matter how small. Minutes turned into an hour, then another. The sun rose higher, pressing down on him like a weight. He had brought water, but it wasn't enough for such a long search. His throat felt dry, and his vision blurred around the edges. He didn't want to admit it, but he knew he was pushing himself too hard. The canyon grew deeper and quieter. Even the wind seemed to disappear. A stillness settled over the land, the kind that made a person feel like they were the only human left in the world. Ethan looked around and realized he wasn't entirely sure where he was anymore. He recognized the general direction, but the exact path had become unfamiliar. It wasn't fear he felt, just a slight worry that he needed to find water soon. He continued riding until Daisy stopped suddenly. She lifted her head, ears forward, sensing something. Ethan trusted her instincts. She walked a few steps on her own, following a scent or a feeling only horses could understand. Then Ethan heard it, a faint sound of water moving. He frowned. There shouldn't have been water here. This part of the land was known to be dry. But the sound grew clearer, soft and calm, like a stream quietly flowing. His heart beat a little faster. For a moment, he wondered if he was imagining it because of the heat. But Daisy kept walking, sure of her direction. They turned around a large rock wall and entered a small hidden space inside the canyon. And there it was, the spring. Ethan stared at it in disbelief. It was beautiful. Clear, shining water sitting in a small basin surrounded by green plants that seemed too healthy for such a dry land. Light reflected off the surface like tiny stars. The air felt cooler near the spring, almost refreshing. Everything about it felt gentle and peaceful. He knew immediately what he had found. People in town always mentioned this place in hushed voices. The spring no one wanted to approach, The one they warned each other about late at night when the stories felt real, the forbidden spring. Ethan swallowed. He didn't consider himself superstitious, but he couldn't ignore how strange and calm the place felt. He dismounted slowly and walked closer. For a long moment, he simply stared at the water. His throat felt tighter with thirst now. His lips were dry and his body felt heavy. He tried to think clearly. He could turn back and try to make it home with the little water he had left. But it was risky. The heat was too strong, and he didn't know exactly how far he had wandered. His calf was still missing too. He needed strength to keep searching. The spring's surface was smooth, almost mirror-like. Ethan knelt beside it. The stories he had heard whispered in his memory. Voices. People hearing whispers. Strange things happening afterward. But in that moment, those stories felt distant and unreal. All he saw was clean, cool water inviting him to drink. Just a few sips, he told himself softly. Nothing will happen. He cupped his hands and lifted the water to his lips. The first sip felt like relief, cool and refreshing. It was the best water he had ever tasted. Soft, almost sweet. He drank again, letting the coolness spread through his tired body. For a moment, he closed his eyes, grateful for the comfort. And then he heard it. A soft whisper. So soft he wasn't sure at first if it was real. It felt like a breath of air moving past his ear, a gentle sound that brushed lightly against his mind, like the first note of a song carried on the wind. You belong to me. Ethan froze. His eyes opened wide. He turned his head sharply, searching for whoever had spoken. No one was there. The canyon was empty except for him and Daisy. The water remained still, peaceful, reflecting the quiet sky. He held his breath, waiting for another sound. Nothing came. The whisper had been so soft, so quick, he wondered if he imagined it. Maybe the heat had gotten worse than he thought. Maybe fatigue had made his mind play tricks. He stood up slowly, wiping his wet hands on his jeans. He listened carefully, but all he heard was silence. Deep, heavy silence. Ethan looked around again, trying to convince himself it was nothing. A trick of the wind. A moment of exhaustion. He had been out in the sun for hours, after all. Anyone in his state might hear something strange. He walked back to Daisy, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling in his chest. She nudged him gently as if sensing his confusion. He stroked her mane, grateful for the familiar comfort. I'm fine, he whispered, though a part of him wasn't sure. He took one last look at the spring. It still looked peaceful, undisturbed, almost innocent. No sign that anything unusual had happened. No sign of a voice or a whisper or a presence. Ethan knew he couldn't stay there long. He needed to continue searching for the calf, then find his way back home before sunset. He mounted Daisy and turned her around to leave the canyon. But as they walked away, he felt something, just a small pull inside him, like a thread tugging gently toward the spring. It wasn't strong, but it was noticeable. He shook his head, trying to ignore it. Yet even as he rode deeper into the canyon, the whisper replayed in his mind, soft and clear. You belong to me. Ethan rode away from the spring with a steady pace, but his mind stayed behind. The whisper kept circling in his thoughts again and again, softer each time yet impossible to forget. He wanted to believe it was nothing, just a trick of exhaustion. But something inside him knew it wasn't that simple. The voice had felt close, almost real, like someone had leaned in and spoken directly into his ear. The canyon was still quiet as he went forward. Daisy's hooves made soft sounds on the ground, and every small noise felt louder than usual. Ethan kept glancing over his shoulder even though he knew no one was there. The spring had been peaceful, but the memory of the whisper made him uneasy in a way he couldn't explain. He tried to focus on the missing calf. That was the reason he had come so deep into the canyon after all. He scanned the land with careful eyes, hoping to spot a small shape somewhere. But the empty desert stretched ahead, endless and still. The sun, now lower in the sky, cast long shadows along the rocks. After another half-hour of searching, Ethan finally spotted the calf resting near a patch of shade, lying calmly as if it hadn't caused any worry. Relief washed over him. He moved slowly so he wouldn't scare it, then guided it gently back toward Daisy. Once the calf was safely on the path home, he let out a long breath. At least one problem had been solved. But the whisper remained. Even as he rode back toward the ranch, Ethan felt something unusual happening in him. A strange pull, like a gentle tug deep inside his chest. It didn't hurt, and it didn't frighten him too much. It just confused him. Every time he tried to ignore it, the feeling grew slightly stronger, like a soft hand trying to get his attention. By the time he reached home, the sun had already set. Soft orange light glowed in the distance, and warm evening air wrapped around the ranch. Ethan put the calf in the pen, checked on the rest of the herd, and walked back toward his house. His steps felt heavy, and not just from exhaustion. His mind felt full, like it couldn't settle down. Inside, he poured himself a glass of water and sat down at his small wooden table. The ranch was quiet. Too quiet. Ethan usually enjoyed silence, but tonight it made the whisper echo louder in his thoughts. "You belong to me." He closed his eyes and took a slow breath, trying to calm himself. He didn't like the feeling of not understanding what had happened to him. Even though the voice had been gentle, he couldn't stop thinking about it. The words had been so clear, as if they were meant only for him. When night fell completely, Ethan went to bed early, hoping sleep would help quiet his thoughts. But as soon as he lay down, the strange feeling returned. Not a sound this time, just a light pressure, almost like a breeze inside his mind, guiding him towards something he couldn't see. It felt as if the canyon was calling him back, like the land itself wanted his attention. Ethan turned on his side, then the other. He couldn't rest. Every time he closed his eyes, the clear image of the spring appeared in front of him. The calm water, the green plants around it, the stillness of that hidden corner. It felt peaceful, yet mysterious, like a secret waiting to speak again. He opened his eyes in frustration. "I'm just tired," he whispered to himself. "That's all it is." But saying it didn't make it feel true. The night slipped slowly by. In the early hours of the morning, Ethan finally fell asleep, but the sleep was restless and full of strange dreams he could barely understand. He saw wide-open land, wind moving through deep canyons, and something watching over everything with quiet patience. The dream wasn't scary, just unfamiliar, like a place he had never been, but somehow knew. He woke with a start the next morning, sitting up quickly. The whisper didn't follow him into the day, but the strange feeling remained. It wasn't as strong as before, but it was there, a small reminder tugging at him. Ethan got dressed and went outside to begin his chores. Everything looked normal. The sky was clear, the animals were calm, the ranch felt familiar. But he didn't feel like himself. Something had changed inside him, something he couldn't see but could deeply sense. Later that morning, he rode into town to pick up supplies. Even the short ride felt different. Every time he passed an open stretch of land, his eyes drifted toward the direction of the canyon. His heart gave a tiny pull, as if it recognized something he couldn't explain. People in town greeted him warmly, but Ethan found himself distracted. He kept glancing at the distant horizon, wondering why the whisper had chosen him. Was it a mistake? Was he supposed to understand something? As he was loading supplies onto his horse, an older woman named Martha walked up to him. Martha had lived in the town longer than anyone else. She knew more stories and old tales than most people had ever heard. She was kind, wise, and noticed things others didn't. "You look troubled, Ethan," she said gently. "Something on your mind?" Ethan hesitated. Normally he would have kept quiet, but for some reason he felt he could trust her. She always had a calm way of speaking that made people feel safe. "I heard something strange yesterday," Ethan finally said, choosing his words carefully. "When I was deep in the canyon." Martha's eyes narrowed with interest. "Did you go far inside?" "A bit farther than usual," he admitted. "I was looking for a missing calf. I wandered into a place I'd never seen before." Martha waited, knowing there was more. "I found a spring," Ethan said softly. Martha's expression changed immediately. Not fear, but recognition. Like she had been expecting those words for years. "And you drank from it," she said quietly. Not as a question, but as a truth she already knew. Ethan looked at her in surprise. "How did you—" "It calls to tired souls," she said, lowering her voice. "Always has. The old stories are not just stories, Ethan. That spring is older than this town, older than any person here. It belongs to the land itself." Ethan felt a chill run through him. Not of fear, but of realization. "I heard something," he said carefully, not wanting to sound foolish. "A whisper." "What did it say?" she asked. He hesitated, then told her. Martha gave a slow nod. "You were chosen." Ethan shook his head quickly. "Chosen for what? I'm just a rancher. I didn't ask for anything." "People never do," she said softly. "The land chooses on its own." Ethan felt more confused than before. "But why me? And what does it want?" Martha placed a gentle hand on his arm. "The whisper isn't trying to harm you. It doesn't belong to a person. It comes from the spirit that watches over the desert. Some say it calls only to those who carry a pure intention. Maybe it saw something in you." "But I don't understand any of it," Ethan said, shaking his head. "I just drank a little water." "That water binds you to the land in a way you cannot see," Martha explained. "The connection will grow stronger over time, but only if you listen carefully." Ethan wasn't sure what to say. Everything felt unreal, too big to understand. He had never believed in legends. Now he was standing in front of someone who spoke about them as if they were everyday truth. "Is there anything I should do?" he asked quietly. "For now," Martha replied, "just listen. The whisper will not speak without purpose." Ethan nodded slowly. He wasn't sure he liked the idea of being chosen, but he couldn't deny the truth. Something had happened at the spring, and it had followed him home. He rode back to his ranch with a mind full of thoughts. The sky felt bigger than usual, the land wider, the silence deeper. He kept remembering the tone of the whisper, not demanding, not harsh, just soft and certain, like it already knew him. "You belong to me." As the day passed, Ethan noticed the strange pull becoming more familiar, almost gentle. Sometimes he would stop in the middle of a chore and look toward the canyon without thinking. Sometimes the wind carried a faint sound that made him pause, unsure if he imagined it. He didn't feel afraid anymore, just curious. Curious about the spring, curious about the whisper, curious about what it meant to be chosen. When night returned, Ethan walked outside and stood under the stars. The desert was quiet, but the quiet felt different, almost alive, as if watching him with interest. Ethan breathed slowly, letting the peace sink into him. He didn't hear a whisper that night, but he felt something, small, warm, steady, like a promise waiting to be understood. And deep inside him, the gentle pull remained, guiding him toward a truth he had not yet uncovered. Ethan woke up the next morning with a quiet feeling inside him. It wasn't fear or worry. It was more like a gentle reminder waiting in the back of his mind. For the first time, he didn't try to push it away. He simply accepted that something unusual had entered his life, and the more he tried to ignore it, the stronger it seemed to grow. He got dressed, made his breakfast, and stepped outside just as the first rays of sunlight touched the ground. The air was cool, and the land looked peaceful. But Ethan felt a soft pull again, the same one that had followed him since he drank from the spring. Today, though, it felt more steady, almost like it wanted to guide him somewhere. Ethan had always trusted his instincts when working with the land. So, instead of fighting the feeling, he let it settle inside him. As the day moved on, the pull grew clearer, gently reminding him of the canyon. He tried to focus on his chores, but every time he picked up a tool or fed the animals, his mind drifted back to that hidden spring. Finally, Ethan decided he couldn't stay confused forever. The whisper wasn't going to disappear on its own, and he didn't want to keep pretending everything was normal. There was something calling him, something that wanted him to understand it. So, after feeding the livestock and making sure the ranch was in order, he saddled up Daisy and headed toward the canyon again. The ride felt different this time. The land looked the same as always: dusty roads, scattered rocks, tall cliffs rising in the distance, but Ethan noticed small details he hadn't seen before. The wind carried a soft sound he couldn't quite name. The sky looked wider, almost welcoming. Even the sunlight felt warmer, as if encouraging him to keep going. Daisy walked calmly, as though she knew exactly where they were headed. Ethan didn't need to pull the reins much. The path seemed to open naturally in front of them, guiding them deeper into the canyon. When they reached the hidden corner where the spring was, Ethan felt a quiet wave of calm wash over him. Last time, he had been exhausted and confused. This time, he felt aware, clear, and strangely connected to the place. The spring looked just as beautiful as before. The water glowed softly under the sunlight, completely still, like a glass window. The plants around it were green and full of life. A light breeze moved gently across the canyon, creating a peaceful sound. Ethan dismounted and walked toward the water, taking slow steps. He didn't feel scared. He felt curious. He knelt down by the spring and touched the cold water with his fingers. The moment he did, a familiar softness filled the air. He felt it before he heard anything, the presence of something watching, something aware of him. He stayed still, waiting. Then it came. A whisper, softer than a breath, drifting across the surface of the water. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't startling. It felt almost like a greeting, warm and welcoming. "You came back." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, letting the gentle sound settle inside him. When he opened them, he looked around, half expecting to see someone standing behind him. But no one was there, only the land, the water, and the quiet air. He took a slow breath. "What do you want from me?" he asked softly. It felt strange talking to a voice he couldn't see. But something inside him told him it was the right thing to do. For a moment, there was silence. Then the whisper returned. "To understand." Ethan frowned slightly. "Understand what?" "The land," the whisper said gently. "The quiet. The things you have always felt but never listened to." Ethan sat back on his heels, surprised by the words. He had always felt a connection to the land. Since childhood, the desert had been more than just dry ground to him. He felt comfort in open spaces, peace in silence, and trust in the rhythm of nature. But he had never imagined something beyond that connection. "You chose me?" Ethan asked quietly. "You chose yourself," the whisper answered. "When you drank from the spring, when you listened to your heart instead of your fear." Ethan thought about that. He remembered how tired he had been that day, how he had let instinct guide him toward the spring. It hadn't felt like a choice then, but maybe it had been. "But why me?" he asked after a moment. "I'm not special." "You are steady," the whisper said, as if explaining something simple. "You are honest. You respect what others forget to respect. You see what others rush past." Ethan felt a warmth spread across his chest. He didn't fully understand the whisper yet, but he could feel its truth. He dipped his hands into the water again and watched the light ripple across the surface. The water felt cooler than before, almost comforting. "Are you a person?" Ethan asked slowly. "Or something else?" There was a long pause this time. The breeze moved softly around him, touching the back of his neck like a careful hand. "I am the voice of the land," it said. "The quiet spirit that keeps the desert safe. I watch, I guide, I protect. And sometimes, I call." Ethan let the words settle in the air. He didn't feel afraid. The voice felt kind, patient, almost familiar, like something he had always sensed without realizing it. "What happens now?" he asked. "You will listen," the whisper replied. "You will learn, and the land will move through you." Ethan's breath caught for a moment. Not from fear, but from the unexpected weight of those words. He didn't know what learning meant in this context, nor what it meant for the land to move through him. But he knew one thing. His life was no longer the same as before. He stood up slowly and looked around the canyon. The cliffs seemed taller, the sky brighter, the air clearer. Everything felt alive in a quiet and gentle way. "What do you want me to do?" he asked again, this time calmer. "Be present," the whisper said. "Be aware. The rest will come." Ethan nodded slowly. He didn't fully understand, but he felt ready to try. The land had always been part of his life. Now he felt like he was part of the land. He turned back toward Daisy and walked to her side. But before he mounted her, he heard the whisper one more time. "You belong to me, because you belong to this place." The words didn't feel like a command. They felt like a promise, a soft truth he had always carried inside him without knowing it. Ethan touched Daisy's neck and took a deep breath. The canyon felt different now, not just a place he had visited, but a place that had opened itself to him. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of meaning, waiting for him to understand it piece by piece. As he rode back home, the pull inside him didn't feel confusing anymore. It felt natural, like a quiet thread connecting him to something bigger than himself. The wind moved gently around him, not as a warning or a whisper, but as a quiet reminder that the land was with him now, patient, steady, and always present. Ethan didn't know exactly what the future held, but for the first time since drinking from the spring, he didn't feel lost. He felt guided. And deep inside him, the soft whisper remained, not as a mystery, but as a calm voice waiting to show him more. Ethan returned to the ranch with a calm heart, but calm didn't mean everything was simple. Over the next several days, he noticed new changes inside himself, small, gentle shifts he couldn't explain with logic alone. He felt events before they happened. He sensed when the cattle needed attention, even before they made a sound. He could predict changes in weather by simply looking at the color of the horizon, and whenever he stepped outside, the breeze touched him like a familiar friend. It wasn't frightening, it was quiet, natural, and strangely comforting. Sometimes, when he paused in the middle of his work, he felt as if the land itself was breathing with him. Every sound, every shift in the air, every movement in nature felt more connected. He didn't feel alone in the world anymore. Instead, he felt supported, like something unseen was guiding each step. But along with these new senses came a deep curiosity. Ethan wanted to understand the purpose behind everything. Why had the spring called him? Why did the whisper choose him? Why did the land want him to listen? One afternoon, he sat on his porch as the sun lowered behind the distant hills. The sky turned soft shades of orange and gold, and the world felt warm and peaceful. Daisy grazed quietly in the distance. Ethan watched her and felt that same gentle pull that had followed him since the day he drank from the spring. It was time to return. He didn't feel forced. The call wasn't demanding or loud. It was simply there. A quiet reminder that his connection to the land wasn't finished yet. There was more to learn, more to hear, more to understand. Ethan stood up slowly, took a deep breath, and whistled for Daisy. She trotted toward him as if she already knew the next step of their journey. He saddled her and began riding toward the canyon again, letting the quiet pull guide the way. As he traveled, the land felt alive around him. Birds flew overhead in smooth patterns. The wind brushed lightly across his arms, and the sky above seemed impossibly wide. He felt at peace, as if everything around him welcomed his return. When he entered the canyon, the air grew soft and cool. The shadows stretched long across the rocks, and the narrow path looked almost glowing under the soft sunlight. Ethan followed the familiar route until he reached the hidden spring. This time, it didn't feel mysterious. It felt like arriving at a place that had been waiting for him all along. Ethan dismounted and stepped toward the water. He felt a warmth in his chest, a soft rising of emotion he couldn't name. He knelt by the spring, just as he had before, and let the calm air settle around him. The whisper came almost immediately, drifting through the quiet like a soft melody. "You returned." Ethan nodded, though the whisper didn't need to see him to understand. "I felt like I had to come back," he said softly. "There's something I still need to know." "Yes," the whisper breathed. "You are ready now?" Ethan looked at the water, waiting. "For what?" he asked. "To accept your connection," the whisper replied. "To understand what it means to belong." Ethan took a slow breath. "I feel different," he admitted. "Every day I sense things I never sensed before. It feels peaceful, but I don't know how to use it. I don't know why it was given to me." There was a gentle pause again. Then the whisper spoke in a voice warm and steady. "The land has always spoken, but only a few listen. You listened. You respected. You moved with calm steps and honest intentions. You showed care even when no one watched." Ethan lowered his eyes, feeling strangely humbled. "You belong to this place," the whisper continued, "and this place belongs to you. When you drank from the spring, the bond between you and the land became clear. You are a keeper now." "A keeper?" Ethan repeated quietly. "A watcher of the land," the whisper explained. "Someone who understands when the earth is tired, when the sky is shifting, when the quiet needs protection. You will sense what others cannot. You will guide not with power, but with understanding." Ethan let the words settle into his mind. Being a keeper wasn't about control or authority. It was about awareness, care, connection. "But why me?" he asked again, though this time his voice was softer, more accepting. "Because you have always belonged," the whisper said. "Because your heart has always carried the rhythm of the desert. Because you listened even before you knew you were listening." Ethan felt a warm peace spread through him. He didn't need to fully understand every detail. He only needed to trust what he felt, and for the first time, he truly did. He touched the surface of the water lightly with his fingertips. The water rippled gently, creating small circles that expanded outward. The whisper moved through those ripples like a soft hum. "You will not walk alone," it said. "Whenever you are uncertain, the land will guide you. Whenever you are tired, the quiet will hold you. Whenever you need to understand, come to me." Ethan looked up, feeling emotion rise in his chest. "I'm grateful," he whispered. "I don't know exactly how to do this, but I want to try." "That is enough," the voice replied. "Trying is the first step of belonging." The canyon around him felt brighter now, not from sunlight, but from something deeper. Peace, warmth, a sense of purpose. Ethan stood slowly and looked around. The rocks seemed less sharp, the shadows less empty, the air more alive. He felt welcomed. He felt known. He walked back to Daisy, but before he mounted her, the whisper spoke one more time. Soft, warm, and certain. You belong to me, and I belong to you. The words didn't feel like possession. They felt like a promise. A connection built not on control, but on trust, on unity, on understanding. Ethan placed a gentle hand over his heart, letting the words settle deep inside. He felt anchored in a way he never had before, like he had finally found the missing piece of himself he didn't even know was gone. He mounted Daisy and began riding out of the canyon. The sky above glowed softly. The evening breeze moved gently around him, and the world felt steady beneath his feet. On his way back home, he noticed something new. When he passed by small plants growing between rocks, they seemed to lean toward him slightly, as if greeting him. When he moved along narrow paths, the wind shifted to guide him, and when he looked at the land stretching far ahead, he felt a quiet joy rising in him. This wasn't the ending of his story. It was the beginning of a deeper journey, one he would walk with calm steps and a steady heart. He no longer felt like a man alone in the desert. He felt like part of something larger, ancient, and gentle. The land trusted him, and he trusted the land. As the sun set completely, covering the world in soft blue light, Ethan reached his ranch again. He looked at the land around him with new eyes. Eyes that saw not just open space, but a living world full of quiet meaning. He touched the ground with his hand, feeling the earth breathe beneath his palm. I belong, he whispered softly. And in the distance, carried on the softest breeze, came a familiar reply.